Annabelle isn't just a prop from The Conjuring. She's the reason the movie exists. She's the inspiration, and she's real. She's been blamed for everything from demonic attacks to sudden deaths. She's locked in a glass case now, sealed with prayers and warnings. Make no mistake, she's not behind glass for protection from you. The glass is to protect you from her. But she wasn't always locked in a cage. Once she lived in a quiet apartment with two young women who thought she was just a gift. This week, we're going to dig into the true story behind one of the most terrifying objects in paranormal history and the untimely death of her caretaker, Dan Rivera. Is there something darker with the sudden passing of Dan? That's for you to decide. Welcome to Project Strangeville. Angie couldn't move. She was frozen, paralyzed in her own bed. Something was on her chest, not just on it, but crawling across it. Heavy, small, cloth limbs sliding over her nightshirt, cold button eyes staring down at her. And then it was gone, like it had never been there. Just a doll on the floor, exactly where they left it. But Angie knew what she felt. She wasn't fooled by her smile, and she wasn't the only one. That night, she turned to Donna, her roommate, and begged her to get rid of it. This was just the beginning. Have you ever woken up and felt like you couldn't move? Like something was in the room with you, watching, touching, weighing down your chest? That moment where your body is frozen, but your heart is racing like it's about to explode? Angie lived that. What would you have done if a child's toy was crawling up your chest while you were sleeping? This wasn't a dream, and what followed was even worse. Because when a child's toy moves on its own, that's not the end of the story. It's only the beginning. It all started in 1970. A young nursing student named Donna was given a doll. It was a gift from her mother. Secondhand, quirky, and harmless. Or so it seemed. She and her roommate Angie set it on the couch, thought it was just a decoration. Then one day, the doll moved. Arms shifting, legs crossed, sometimes standing, like it had a mind of its own. Then the notes appeared. Help me, and help Lou, scrawled in pencil on scraps of old parchment. The events were subtle, at first, but far too frequent to ignore. Drawers left open, the doll moved, notes appeared. Donna and Angie weren't just frightened, they were confused, concerned, and deep down, they wondered if someone or something was trying to reach out. Desperate for answers, they called in a medium. She told them the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins had died in that building, a child who was lost and just wanted to be loved, a home, a family. Donna and Angie believed her. They gave the spirit permission to stay, and from that moment on, they started calling the doll Annabelle. But things got worse, physical. It attacked Lou. They called a priest, and that priest called in Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens weren't just ghost hunters. They were the real-life investigators behind the Amityville horror. They ran the Warren Occult Museum, where cursed objects were locked away and studied. Each case carried a warning. But Annabelle, she came with a threat. They'd spent years confronting demons, exorcisms, and dark forces most people wouldn't speak of. And they didn't buy the ghost story. They believed Annabelle wasn't possessed. She was being used. A demonic entity, pretending to be a child, wearing the doll like a mask to get closer to its real target. And now, it had been invited in. Would you open your door to a child in need? What if that child wasn't a child at all? What if your kindness was the very thing that gave evil permission to step inside? The Warrens had seen that trick before, but this case, this doll, was different. More deceptive, more dangerous, and they weren't the last to suffer because of it. Stick around, because before this story ends, you're going to learn who Lou is and what happened to him. And once you do, you'll understand why Annabelle is considered an extremely dangerous doll. When Ed and Lorraine Warren passed away, they left behind more than stories. They left a collection of haunted artifacts, each one sealed, locked, and documented. And at the center of it all was her, Annabelle. She wasn't just another cursed object. She was the reason the museum existed. The Warrens didn't entrust her to just anyone. They chose Dan Rivera. He wasn't just a fan, he was a protege, a trained demonologist who'd faced real darkness. He knew what Annabelle could do. He read the reports, he heard the stories, he believed them. Dan wasn't just a keeper of secrets, he shared them. His tours of the Warren Museum drew thousands. Clips of Annabelle's case racked up millions of views online, but Dan never treated her like a sideshow. To him, she wasn't a relic, she was a warning. So when he took custody of her case, he followed every rule. He never touched the glass with bare hands. He never traveled with her by air. He never joked about her. Always said the binding prayer. Never underestimated her. And still, in the weeks leading up to his death, Dan said he felt watched, sick, unstable. He thought he was being careful, but evil doesn't play by your rules. And in July of 2025, Dan Rivera died. Dan didn't take Annabelle lightly. He knew the price of disrespect, and yet, even with all of his training, even with all of his caution, something still found a way in. Now, for full disclosure, Dan's family states that they don't believe Annabelle had anything to do with Dan's death, and the coroner reported that Annabelle was not in the room when he was found. Dan believed in preparation. Every case, every artifact, every encounter. And when it came to Annabelle, he wasn't alone. One of his closest allies was a priest named Father Jason. Young, bold, and devout. He agreed to bless the case before Dan transported her. Just a precaution, they thought. But nothing about what happened next felt routine. Father Jason began the blessing, sprinkling holy water, reciting Latin sculpture. The room fell still, then heavy. The temperature dropped, the lights dimmed, and then came the sound, not from outside the room, but inside the case. A slow, deliberate knock from the inside. Father Jason paused, his voice faltered, and the moment the prayer ended, he collapsed. No pulse for nearly 30 seconds. Cold, unresponsive. Dan called 911. Paramedics arrived. He survived. But the priest never returned to Dan's side, never touched another cursed object, and never spoke of the doll again. What had been a simple blessing turned into something darker, a warning. What does it say when a priest loses his faith mid-prayer? When a man of God walks away without a word and never looks back? Some things don't need to scream to be terrifying. Sometimes all it takes is a knock from inside the box. What does that tell you about what's inside that doll? They called her Annabelle, but the Warrens believed what lives inside her was never human. Over the years, Dan heard stories. Some whispered, some shouted, but they all had one thing in common. Someone mocked the doll, and something terrible happened. There was another priest who visited the Warrens Museum. He laughed at the idea of a cursed doll, told Ed Warren it was nonsense. He tapped on the glass and taunted Annabelle, saying, "If you're real, do something." 3 hours later, his brakes failed on the drive home. He crashed into a tree. The car was totaled. He barely survived. Then there was the young man who visited the museum with his girlfriend. He banged on the glass case, mocking Annabelle, challenged her to scratch him. They were kicked out. And on the motorcycle ride home, he lost control, crashed into a tree. He died instantly. His girlfriend survived, but said he was joking about the doll just seconds before the wreck. Dan never forgot those stories. He carried them with him, warnings from the past, echoing into the present. Because Annabelle doesn't need your belief, she only needs your attention. Have you ever laughed at something you didn't understand? mocked a warning just because it didn't feel real. A priest did, a tourist did, and now they're cautionary tales. Dan never laughed. He took Annabelle seriously from day one, but that didn't save him. And he wasn't the only one in danger, because before Dan ever came into the picture, the doll had already marked someone else, someone named Lou. Stick around, because his story is next, and it's the most violent one of all. Before the museum, before Dan, before the Warrens even sealed her away, there was Lou. He wasn't a stranger. He was Donna's friend, and he hated the doll from the beginning. Said it gave him bad dreams, said it stared at him. One night, Lou was staying over. Donna and Angie were asleep, and he woke up to a noise in the room. The doll was sitting at the end of the bed. He watched it, uneasy. Then everything went black. He woke up moments later, grabbing his chest. 3 deep claw marks carved across his skin, like something invisible had raked through him. Donna found him in shock, shaking, the doll still sitting, watching. They didn't need more proof. Annabelle wasn't a toy, and Lou was lucky to be alive. Today, Annabelle sits in a locked case at the Warren Occult Museum. The sign reads, "Warning, positively do not open." The case is sealed, blessed, surrounded by other cursed objects from around the world, but no one lingers near her for long. Visitors say they feel watched. Some say they get sick. Some leave and never come back. Dan did everything right. He followed every rule, and now he's gone. They say his death wasn't suspicious, but those who knew him, those who knew the doll, they don't believe that, because Annabelle doesn't just want attention, she wants access, and behind that glass, she waits. Some stories end with answers. This isn't one of them. We don't know what Annabelle really is. We don't even know if Dan's death was the end or just the beginning of something new. All we know is this: every person who ignored the warnings, every person who mocked her, paid a price. And now you've heard her story. You've seen what she's capable of, so ask yourself this: would you step closer to that case? Would you reach out your hand? Or would you keep your distance and hope she never notices you? If you like paranormal, unsolved mysteries, and true crime, then please hit that like button and subscribe. There's a lot more to come. Thanks for watching. This is Project Strangeville.